Welcome to Betrayal Narratives. Today, you're going to hear a story of profound deception and the clarity that can rise from the ashes of a broken heart. It's a story about a man who discovered his wife. As so-called medical conference was just a stage for a shocking betrayal and how he found his strength in the face of it all. My name is Henry Peach, and for 17 years I believed I was married to a devoted nurse. Vivian was a woman dedicated to caring for the sick, volunteering at our parish, and working long, grueling shifts to support our home. She was the one who provided care, who healed others. I never imagined I'd be the one who needed emotional first aid. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came on a Thursday morning. She was packing for what she called a medical conference in Chicago. 3 days of seminars, networking, and professional development. It sounded completely normal, completely believable. Why would I ever doubt her? I walked into our bedroom holding a fresh cup of coffee for her, a small gesture we'd shared for nearly 2 decades, and then I froze. Inside her open suitcase, lying next to her usual nursing uniform, were 2 items that made my world tilt on its axis. A neatly folded nun's costume and a brand new 12-pack of condoms still in the pharmacy bag. For a long moment, my brain simply refused to compute what I was seeing. A nun costume. Condoms? A conference. None of this fit the life I believed we shared. It was like looking at a puzzle where the pieces were from completely different boxes. I tried to keep my voice calm. A skill you learn after years of marriage, that ability to sound peaceful even when your soul feels like it's catching fire. "Hey, honey, what's this?" I asked, pointing to the strange items. Vivian walked out of the bathroom with a toothbrush in her hand, her eyes wide, like a child caught stealing from an altar. "Oh, that!" she said, forcing a little laugh. "The conference has a themed dinner. Saints and Sinners Night. You know how these corporate events get? They try to make it fun, right?" I nodded slowly, pretending to accept the explanation. "And the condoms?" She didn't miss a beat. Well, maybe half a beat. "Free samples from a pharmaceutical rep. They want nurses to pass them out for safe practice awareness." Sure, totally normal to take 12 of them to a conference still in the store packaging. While she slept soundly beside me that night, I stared at the ceiling, doing the kind of math no husband ever wants to do. The numbers just didn't add up. Doctors don't hand out condoms in packs of 12 to individual nurses for a campaign. And work conferences don't usually involve nun outfits, not the kind she was working at anyway. By sunrise, the deep unease in my chest had hardened into a cold, heavy certainty. The next morning confirmed everything my gut was screaming at me. I told her I had an early meeting, kissed her goodbye, and then drove straight to the airport. I parked in the long-term garage, finding a spot where I could watch her without being seen. Hidden behind a row of SUVs, I watched my wife get out of her car, look around, and then quietly, methodically poke tiny holes in every single condom wrapper, one by one. Deliberate, careful, and intentional. This wasn't for protection. This was for pregnancy. And it clearly wasn't with me. I sat in my car for nearly half an hour afterward, completely stunned. The air felt thick and heavy, and I couldn't seem to draw a full breath. The woman I had loved for 17 years was not just cheating, she was planning something far more deceptive. Then, a strange calm washed over me. The shock gave way to a chilling resolve. I drove home and did what any betrayed husband in my position would do. I looked for the truth. Her phone records told the story in dates and times. But the real evidence was on her open laptop, where her email, messages, and photos were all logged in with no password barriers at all. Maybe she thought she was untouchable. Or maybe she just forgot that I wasn't a fool. The mystery man was named Garrett Blackwood, a welding contractor with 3 kids and a recent divorce. They'd been seeing each other for 5 months. 5 months of secret lunches, late-night texts, and stolen afternoons while I was at work, believing my wife was at the hospital. The photos were the hardest part. There they were, smiling at a restaurant, holding hands at a park, living a life I knew nothing about. Reading their messages felt like an out-of-body experience. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future. Garrett, it turned out, wanted another child. He'd told Vivian that he dreamed of having a baby with her. And Vivian, my Vivian, who had always told me she didn't want children, was now desperately trying to get pregnant with his. The medical conference was their getaway. The nun costume was for a twisted role-play game they had planned. And the sabotaged condoms were her ticket to a new life, built on a foundation of lies. That day, something in me snapped. The grief was still there, a massive weight in my chest, but it was joined by an icy rage. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had plotted to deceive me in the most profound way possible. She was going to trap another man with a baby and leave me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started planning. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who specialized in high-conflict divorces. I gathered every piece of evidence, the emails, the photos, the phone records. I even took a picture of the nun costume and the tampered condom wrappers before she left. When Vivian returned from her conference, she was glowing, told me all about the boring seminars and the fun-themed dinner. She looked me right in the eye and lied with a smile. It was the last time I would ever see her as my wife. The next morning, as she sipped her coffee, I served her with divorce papers. I laid out copies of the photos, the emails, and a printout of my lawyer's retainer. Her face went from confused to horrified to pale white in a matter of seconds. The smug confidence she'd worn like a second skin dissolved completely. "Henry, what is this? How could you?" she stammered, her voice trembling. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see the woman I loved. I saw a stranger. It's a real question, Vivian, is how could you? The nun costume, Garrett, sabotaging condoms to get pregnant with another man's baby. I know everything. Her world collapsed right there at our kitchen table. The divorce was brutal, but I had all the leverage. Her affair, her deceit, and her premeditated plan to get pregnant were all laid bare. She tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, she walked away with very little. Her reputation at the hospital was tarnished, and many of our mutual friends, once they learned the truth, turned their backs on her. As for Garrett, I sent him a single anonymous package containing a copy of their messages and a photo of the sabotaged condoms. I never heard what happened between them, but I can guess their planned future didn't quite work out. It's been 2 years since that day. Healing from a betrayal that deep isn't a straight line. There are good days and bad days. But I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I found new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and learned to trust myself again. The pain of her betrayal taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes the people we think we know best are the ones who hide the most. And sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way to find solid ground to stand on again. I turned that heartbreak into clarity, dignity, and a new chapter of my life, one where honesty is the only rule. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced betrayal, know that you are not alone, and there is a path forward to healing and finding your own strength. She told him she was separated. He told her he was ready for a fresh start. Neither of those things was true. Her emails were the worst part. Vivian wrote about her plan to get pregnant, how it would force the situation and make Garrett finally commit. Garrett's replies were hesitant, but not completely opposed. Apparently, he'd always wanted a larger family. I stared at the computer screen for a long time. Then I made my decision calmly, rationally, without anger. If Vivian wanted a future with him, I would give her the opportunity. I spent the entire morning packing every single one of her belongings. Clothes, books, toiletries, her porcelain cat figurines, the nursing textbooks she kept for nostalgia, her half of our wedding china. Everything that had her touch by noon. The house looked like she had never existed inside it. I loaded my truck and drove straight to Garrett. Duplex on the west side of town, a modest neighborhood filled with welding trucks, old RVs, and hardworking families. I stacked the boxes neatly by the door. Woman opened it, brunette, wearing cartoon print scrubs, exhausted but kind-looking. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes. These belong to Vivian Peach. My wife, I said. She's been spending a lot of time with the man who lives here. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. She wasn't just his neighbor, she was his ex-wife, the mother of his kids. She had no idea. 5 minutes later, Garrett himself stepped outside, confused. Then horrified as the truth unraveled right in front of him. The ex-wife's hurt, my disappointment. The realization that two families had been blindsided by selfish lies, it all hit him like a truck. For the first time in months, Vivian wasn't the one in control of her narrative. Later that evening, she called me, her voice trembling. "Henry, why are all my things gone? What did you do?" "I simply put everything where it belongs," I said quietly. "With the man you risked everything for." She sputtered excuses, denials, claims of confusion, remorse. We were on a break, everything in the book. But everything I needed to know was already clear. "You wanted a new life?" I told her gently. "Now you have it. And I hope you get the peace you're looking for." I hung up. And for the first time in years, I felt something I barely recognized: relief. Here's what happened afterward. The part most betrayal stories never get to celebrate. Vivian didn't end up with Garrett. His ex-wife didn't take him back. Their affair collapsed in days, once exposed to daylight. But me, I rebuilt. It took months, therapy, deep breaths, long quiet evenings, rebuilding identity after 17 years of shared life. But every piece of the process made me stronger. I focused on my health, my family connections, my career, my emotional stability, and rediscovering what I enjoyed outside marriage 1 year later. I was a version of myself I hadn't seen in decades. Stable, peaceful, confident, and surprisingly grateful. Sometimes the ending you think you want, reconciliation, apology, closure, isn't the ending you need. Sometimes the real victory is walking away with your dignity intact.